Okay, students, so we are going to talk about different genres of music. I wanted to give you guys a little background of various genres so that you can more clearly decide on which genre that you would like to use while you are doing your for your research paper that you're going to be doing. Now remember, your research paper is 2 pages, so front, back. You need to write about the genre, the history, the origins, the influences. You guys have all been given the research paper template. It's been sent home in the mail. It's also on the SLA website. If you go on there and click under 6th period music, it is there. But we're going to do a little discussion today. As you can see, I did not prepare this particular PDF file, but it seems as though it's really effective, so we're going to use it anyway. Now, I'm going to give you about 30 seconds, 45 seconds or so to grab some paper and a pencil if you want it, your notebook if you took it home, or if there's relevant information that you like from each of these, you can take a screenshot, which can help you too later as you begin writing. So, what is music? For some, a blissful experience to be enjoyed along with the glass of the finest red. For some, music is a distraction during a boring treadmill session. Some would consider Beethoven's piano sonatas a copyrighted property of the lullaby channel because it's used a lot for music for babies to go to sleep. Some would struggle to pronounce boujiribou, and the actual pronunciation is didgeridoo. And I have one of those in the class, which is an African drum. And some would mock Indian classical music, which is the oldest surviving school of music, as just sheer wailing. To us in the Western world, it sounds a lot like screaming. So, what is a genre of music? It's a group of styles of music that have a common tradition or common fundamental values. Like we talked about yesterday in the video, social events that happen and social upheaval and revolutions and struggles can create various forms of music genres. It can be likened to a genus in taxonomy, which is constituted by animals sharing a common evolutionary ancestor and having some distinct anatomical commonalities, despite having vastly different superficial appearances. So the concept of a species of subgenres can be best explained by the number of subgenres in rock music, right? You guys know there's rock and roll, there is alternative rock, there's hard rock, there is rockabilly, and there's many, many more. In modern times, now, and I mean modern, I guess, in the sense of post-Great Depression, 1935, 1940, the music industry often has a larger say in creating a new genre than the music itself. And by industry, we mean corporations and companies that control a lot of the wealth surrounding music. Numerous modern genres can be said to have been inspired as a commercial gimmick rather than an artistic endeavor. So music, in its broader definition, to finally get to an answer, what is music? 2 styles, Western music and Oriental. Right? Western music would be Eastern European, Western Europe, as well as the United States, Canada, Latin America, and South America. The Oriental styles of music would be considered the Middle East, actually. The Northern Middle East over to India, Tibet, China, Indonesia, and the island countries. African music can be included as a separate genre, but quite a few African styles have now made their way into music that we listen to, whether or not you know it, especially when it comes to drums. Hence, it has been included in the category of Western music. So, rock music. It describes a large variety of musical influences. It is so popular in our country, and it's a fusion of two other genres early on, blues and country, along with the significant elements of jazz. Along with its influences, rock and roll was typified by the extensive use of the snare drum to keep the beat or the time. Rock and roll began in the 1950s, revolutionized the music scene in the West, and the proponents of this flamboyant and very physical type of music helped to shape the trends in racism, fashion, and lifestyle. Especially glam rock, right? Where costumes were famous and outrageous. Think Elvis Presley, think late 50s, early 60s Led Zeppelin, think Elton John. All of these guys were very flamboyant. This was a sort of music that brought a lot of African drum and African American drum elements, and it was a music that sort of was separate from segregation, which is really cool. And of course, a lot of people say the king of rock and roll was Elvis. King in the sense that he took a lot of, him and his studio people took a lot of blues music, Negro blues, and country music, sped it up, added more drums to it, and there you go. In the late 60s and 70s, two subgenres. So rock and roll is a genre, and then you have genres or subgenres underneath it. Hard rock and heavy metal. These are extremely popular forms of music throughout the last 50, 60, 70 years. Jimi Hendrix. If you don't know some of these artists, look them up, man. Jimi Hendrix was the man. Jimmy Page, who was the lead singer of Led Zeppelin, and Eric Clapton was in a band called Cream and became a solo blues musician of his own right. There's a song that the Beatles did called While My Guitar Gently Weeps. And even though it's a Beatles song, Eric Clapton is playing the guitar part, and it is amazing. But rock at this point has gone on to encompass so many range of styles that it doesn't sound like the original rock and roll music. It's changed a lot. So they say at the bottom here that rock and roll is the most popular genre of music in the history of mankind. And in a sense, if you listen to K-pop, if you listen to popular Chinese music, or if you listen to European music from any country there, the elements of rock are absolutely in there. Subgenres. I'm not going to go through all of these guys, but there's so many, right? You got your garage rock, death metal, heavy metal, grunge. You can think Nirvana, speed metal, desert rock, southern rock, right? You got your oh gosh, now I'm drawing a blank here. There's a lot of southern rock music that was really popular in the 60s and 70s. Yes. Notable bands of rock: the Beatles, Rolling Stones, who I saw last August. They came to Phoenix. Awesome. The Byrds, the Yardbirds, Led Zeppelin, Aerosmith, Queen, U2, AC/DC, The Who, Pink Floyd, Nirvana, the Chili Peppers, Baby, Linkin Park, Avenged Sevenfold, 3 Days Grace. And down here at the bottom is a list of notable solo performers who were also in bands. John Lennon and Paul McCartney were both in the Beatles. Jimi Hendrix was in a band called The Experience. Chuck Berry, Buddy Holly, Mick Jagger, you know, the lead singer of Rolling Stones. Roddy Wood, David Barry, Sid Barrett was in the Ramones. Alice Cooper, lots of others. Jazz. Okay, now jazz music developed among the black community of the southern United States, most specifically New Orleans. It's considered a classical version of blues, a more educated, structured version where the majority of the musicians actually learn how to read music to be able to play it. Most blues music, as you guys know, was very poor black music. Think sharecropper America. Think uneducated post-slaves who were treated poorly in the South. Jazz, on the other hand, was based in New Orleans, where African Americans were becoming more affluent, were getting education, learning music. And it's actually one of the only indigenous American styles of music. Right? If you think about blues, its influences come from Negro spirituals, which came from African styles of call and response. But jazz is one of the only, if not the only, I think so, only actual American form of music. It's usually played by ensembles, meaning groups of musicians, with their ability to play off each other and to improvise. Flavio, I know you like to jam and improvise. Maybe jazz would be something that you could get into. If you ask me, I can send you a bunch of musicians that play jazz. The improv style of jazz links it to Indian classical music. Also, there have been a lot of collaborations between jazz musicians and Indian classical musicians. Ravi Shankar, who is one of the most famous Indian musicians, who's worked with the Beatles, he's worked with varying other popular groups, and his daughter, Norah Jones. I don't know if you know her. She was pretty big in the early 2000s. She is a kind of a pop R&B piano performer. Some of the jazz musicians, Louis Armstrong, you know, he played the trombone, very popular. Miles Davis, he might be my favorite jazz musician of all time. He played the trumpet and was the man. Frank Sinatra, John Coltrane, Thelonious Monk played the piano. John McLaughlin, Billie Holiday, beautiful voice, along with Ella Fitzgerald. Mingus played the piano. Sonny Rollins. Dave Brubeck was sort of a big band jazz guy in the late 40s and 50s. Django Reinhardt. So we've talked about him a little bit in class. He was missing 2 fingers on his left hand. He played more flamenco jazz style music. So very popular. Also, there are subgenres, many of them. You can check those out. Okay, let's continue here. Also, classical music. This is one of the oldest surviving styles in modern music. It has set renditions of melodies that are played over and over and over again, right? If you think about Moonlight Sonata, piano, all of you know it if you hear it. It has been played by hundreds of people over the centuries, and they all play it exactly the same way. Operas, symphony orchestras, they do Mozart's Symphony 9, right? Is done over and over exactly the same way. There's no improvisation in it. But it also gives it a traditional beauty all of its own. There's so many forms of Western classical music: medieval, Renaissance, Baroque, classical, romantic, and modern. More modern classical music, whether or not you know this, a lot of it is in the movies that you guys watch these days, right? The soundtrack, the score of movies. The medieval period is considered sort of the first strong period of classical music in Western Europe during the Renaissance period. And then it's changed in its varying genre over the last hundreds of years. Western music really came into its own in the Baroque and classical periods: Vivaldi, Bach, Mozart, and Beethoven. A lot of people say that classical music is boring, especially by young people. Maybe not you guys, since you're into music. But it is one of the oldest and most respected genres of music. And if you really can turn your thoughts off and use your heart and your spirit and connect to the music, you can see the genius in it. Beethoven, Mozart, Bach, Chopin, Vivaldi, Rossini, Stravinsky, violin composer. There's so many out there. If you guys want to lead in and start listening to classical music, let me know. I can send you lots and lots of classical music. Blues. Okay, so blues music originated from African Americans, from their work songs in the fields. And these field songs were originally known as Negro spirituals that evolved into what became the blues. There's really mostly simple lyrics and simple tunes. The structure of blues is pretty simple, but it does lend room for lots of improvisations. For those of you that have been learning about scales in class, the idea of soloing and freestyling really came from these blues musicians who began playing music, and it transformed into country and jazz. And also rock and roll, of course. We all know this. The blues genre was engraved in work songs, and there's different subgenres of blues, right? Here it says the Dallas blues. There's the St. Louis blues, the Alabama blues, Mississippi blues. They all sort of had their little twinges on what it was they talked about, and even the style of notes and scales that they would play in their music. A lot of Negro blues musicians used unstandard tuning, so instead of using the open E tuning, which is what most music is that we listen to, now they would do alternate tuning such as open D, open G, open C, to create their own style. Blues music was primarily played unplugged, but imagine you sitting in a field with a bunch of people and you're playing guitar and singing. The more people are there, the more difficult it is to hear what you're playing. So in the 1940s or so, there was electric instruments began to start. So they would take these little small pickups that would pick up the sound, place them inside the guitar, plug them into an amplifier, and it changed the game for blues music and the music that was about to blow sky high, rock and roll. Many blues artists chose electric instruments, but a lot of them stayed with acoustic renditions of these same songs too. There's also jump blues, which is an energetic, fast type of blues music, is considered to be the precursor of rock and roll, right? Now, rhythm and blues, another way to say it is R&B, a subgenre of blues and jazz music, has developed to be considered a genre of itself, right? You can think a lot about Beyonce's music or Rihanna's music. It's very poppy, but there's definitely elements of R&B, love, emotions, feelings, there. Lots and lots of blues musicians. Robert Johnson, right? If you guys ever heard the story of the guy who goes to the crossroads and he meets the devil there, he tells the devil that he'll give the devil his soul if he lets him become a great blues musician, right? There's actually a couple little Netflix shows. I saw a movie a few months ago that's on Netflix about Robert Johnson. Muddy Waters, he was a Mississippi man that went up to Chicago and sort of became the father of Chicago blues. Robert Nighthawk, Bessie Smith, big old black lady, man, that could wail and sing and scream her heart out. Blind Lemon Jefferson was from Mississippi. He actually was a blind man that played the blues. T-Bone Walker, another Chicago blues man. Son House, who was and I say this in the best way, a sort of a failed preacher who sang the blues. And if you ever watch on YouTube, just type in Son House, and there's tons of black and white videos of him playing pieces and then talking about the Black South. And these videos are from the 50s. It's really powerful stuff. Lots of others, B.B. King. Many different styles of blues down here. You guys can check this out too. What I think we're going to do now, guys, is we're going to stop for today. I don't want to wear you out. We will be continuing this particular lesson tomorrow. So if you guys could log in tomorrow after watching your video today. So you've already got a few genres you can think about if you're interested in writing about. We also are going to get into a few others: reggae, hip-hop, Latino music, traditional music, pop music, right, over the next few days. So please make sure that you tune in and that you check your videos every day so that you are ready and you're going to be able to do this paper. So make sure you email me, patnewley@gmail.com or patrick.newley@rop.com, and I will answer any questions you have. Have a great day, guys.